And that moves us off of our action agenda to our discussion agenda. The discussion of the September-October bond issuance exhibit G.
Thank you, Madam Chair, trustees. As our interim CFO, Ms. Marty Rawls, comes to the lectern, I'd just like to start off by saying, as we talk about our 5-year plan, we arc back to the facilities conditions assessment that was done by MPS in August, presented in August 2023. As you remember, we assessed all of our facilities, and we have prioritized the 2-rated facilities. However, as we look at the Category 1, Category 2, Category 3, and Category 4 and 5 items within those facilities, those that had a composite of 3 and 4, those yellow and blue schools, there is no plan for their critical need items. When we look at the total amount in that MPS study, that was $39.2 million that we have no plan for. And so that's when we talk about is there a need? Obviously, there is a need. But how do we address that? So what we are asking is to issue debt in the fall, and that's what we would use the sinking fund to address that. But we don't have enough to take care of the 39, so I asked operations to look at some of the most critical areas, and I want to ask Ms. Rawls to come forward and outline how we plan to address that. Ms. Rawls?
Thank you, Dr. Ross. As Dr. Ross said, we're looking at the yellow and blue 3 and 4 rated schools with relation to their health, safety, and security needs. Some of these needs may be ADA recommendations. They could have something to do with the vestibules in the front of the schools, but these are schools that are not being addressed by any other capital funding source. You see the bars that are in red that are included in this $39.23 million. Those are schools that are going to have either other funding sources or their issues are going to be addressed with other funding, possibly through some capital funds that would be issued in the future or some funds that are earmarked for those schools already. So these are the 1s and 2s, the most critical needs that have been addressed, and worked with the facilities team to identify what schools and how much it would be to address these needs. As you can see, Chapin High School is obviously the largest bar on this graph at a $9 million need, all the way down to Oak Point that was less than a $500,000 need. We do have specific projects outlined for all of these. Again, this is $18 million worth of needs that have been identified in the MPS study. You've seen this chart several times, and I want to call your attention to the orangish reddish lines that are above the angle going up. Remember, the angle going up is what 69.5 mils generates at a 2% growth and 95% collection rate. But these bars that are over the line are where the sinking fund is. So what we are able to do through this is take care of our needs, and we're able to do that by the sinking fund servicing this debt. The sinking fund that is there with no tax increase will pay the payments on this capital debt, and there are sufficient resources there with, like I said, without a tax increase to be able to cover the debt on a $15 million debt issuance that is within our 8% capacity. It would be of a short-term issue. The bonds would be closing in August, or their sale dates in August with closing in September, and the bonds would be paid off in March of 2025. The cost of the interest on these bonds would be obviously lesser because they're only going to be outstanding for approximately 6 to 7 months, and an anticipated cost of issuance would be $50,000 to $55,000. when working with Jay Glover and with Franny Heiser, they both agreed and will certainly be here to answer any questions for you when we bring this for action. But they will be able to be here and state that the SCAGO program that would be the fall program, that's what we're looking at doing, because there again, pooled resources, pooled districts make it to where there's a lesser cost of issuance. And Jay agreed that that would be the best method for us to issue bonds again. The benefits for the program, we're addressing the needs today. Today, when we know what the cost of addressing these needs are, we're not deferring it for the future. When the costs are increased, we're able to address them with capital funds. We're not using operating funds. These are strictly capital funds to do this. And we're living within our approved rate, the 69.5 mils and the legal 8% capacity. So we're living within what resources that have been provided for us to be able to service these debt and to take care of the needs that have been identified in the schools. Obviously, this is for discussion tonight, but the recommendation would be coming up to issue for you all to approve the 8% debt with the $15 million with the bond with the fall SCAGO program. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Huddle?
Well, a couple questions. One is, are those specific projects going to be listed in the bond resolution?
It will be in the bond resolution, but we'll also have that list for you at the next meeting. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and this may be a Dr. Ross question. We put some projects in the bond referendum, and we have projects here. Are they of equal importance, or how do they rank?
Great question. So in the referendum, and I'll go back to the first slide, we realized that we had over $182 million identified as of August 2023. What we did is prioritize for the referendum those buildings in orange, the 2 rated buildings. We did not include in our 5-year plan the critical need items at the yellow and blue schools. So this is addressing the buildings that are in yellow and blue.
Okay, I guess, so the reason I'm asking is, that makes sense, but if the bond referendum fails and we've already allocated this money to these specific projects, then we won't have this money available to perhaps do things at Dutch Fork Elementary. So I guess I'm concerned about the timing. Why would we not wait to do this until after we know the results of the bond referendum so that we could use the money for those needs if the bond referendum doesn't pass?
And the reason, that's a very good question. That's something we talked about. The issue is that, and Mr. Allen, not to put it on the spot, but these are their critical items that we had zero planned for. So when we look at, we're talking about life safety, if you want to talk about some of those things that we've identified in these yellow and blue schools.
So a lot of these items are life safety items or ADA compliance items that we have found through the MPS study. So these are the 1s and 2s of the schools that we were not going to touch with the bond referendum.
I guess I'm just really concerned because, like, one of the biggest items in the bond referendum was security. And, I mean, I've been in art schools and some of them, anyway. Again, I'm just kind of concerned that we do this before the bond referendum, because if the bond referendum doesn't pass, I would think there's some things on that bond referendum that we would want to use this money for.
And I share that with the board. We're going to talk about that today. But I think, for instance, when it comes to life safety, and that's the issue, the gravity that we have. We have so many issues that we need to address. So we're trying to prioritize life safety issues that are not in any plan. And that's why this became something that we could get started on. Now, as always, will we execute all 15 million before the referendum? The answer is no. But we can at least get started on some of these life safety issues that there is no plan for, and that's why they're prioritized that way.
have the opportunity to issue debt in the spring. So if the referendum were not to pass, those would rise to the top of the list for the spring issuance, and we would work to address those items with those bonds.
Yes, Dr. Ross, when would these projects start?
Alan, do you know in terms of timeline, if we issued, in terms of funding, Marty, do you?
Available in September, and based on design and permitting, we would be able to move forward on their timeline.
Yeah, for some of these items, it would probably be around the first of the year,
January.
somewhere around there.
So if you waited to the fall to make a decision on this, how does that impact that timeline?
We would not be able to issue in the fall SCAGO program, so it would cost us, it could potentially cost more in issuance costs. That would be the biggest impact that I'm aware of.
Wait until spring issuance
If you
to
wanted-
get
if
any
you wanted
project
to-
started?
If you wanted to participate in the SCAGO program, but understand, when they do the design work, it's always going to be a couple of months after. I mean, if you said yes, that we can move forward with this, and you all support this resolution at your July meeting, they can start working on project plans then, and so it may be that it could happen quicker. It really just depends.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you for asking that follow-up question. That's what I wanted, and that's the reason for my question, especially when you're talking about safety and security of our kids, so, thank you.
Mr. Scully?
Yeah, and you may have said this and I missed it, but you talk about life safety issues. Can you give me some examples of that? What are you talking about specifically?
So the way that MPS has it listed is health, safety, and security. That's just one area. I guess that's how they grade all the occurrences that have happened throughout the district. So some of them are looking at egress routes, making sure that we have the clear egress. I know we had some fire doors that we had to resolve. I'm not sure if labels were peeled off or if it just was not compliant when it was built. And then we have a lot of ADA issues that we're seeing across the district.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Oops. Ms. Huddle?
Could you go back to the slide that has the projects on them? The one, okay, so this is, we're taking out the red bars, correct? Okay, so,
Some of the others were reduced, so it's not just taking out the red bars. Some of the others may have reductions based on the prior chart.
I guess I just have a request, is that kind of goes to the question that was just asked, is before the next meeting, could we get more detail on these? And could we ask Mr. Glover for an estimate of the cost of issuance if we were to wait until November 15th or whatever the first meeting is after the bond referendum? And one kind of follow-up, so that would be handy. So the finishing out the alarms where when a door is left open, where is that? Is it in the bond referendum? Is it in here? Where is that? To do that everywhere?
So the door alarms were part of capital, previous capital, so that's already,
But it's all of them? Because I wasn't clear on that.
I would have to get some more information.
Could
as to
we
where-
find
to where
out
we
about
stand
that
on
too?
all the door
Yeah,
alarms.
just for the next meeting, where we stand on all of them.
Is there a way, I don't know this, because, I mean, that is a question about, if the bond passes or doesn't pass, like we've prioritized these items. Is there a way to put, because you have a list of all of the projects that would be allowed to be paid for with this $15 million issuance, and it's likely that some of the projects wouldn't get started until after the election in November, when we know whether or not what's passed or not passed. Is there a way to put in security concerns into that list that, so for example, if we pass it and the bond doesn't pass and we have all of those number one security issues, that some of that money can be allocated towards that and some of these does that make sense so that we know? It might not make sense. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm articulating what I mean
So
by that, but.
if we were to issue in September and you all approved a resolution, it would have specific projects listed on it. So based on the projects that you all approve in the resolution are the projects that we would have to complete with this funding, because that's what we've told the public we were going to do with this money. So switching projects out would not be an option.
So you couldn't have like an asterisk that says the security concerns, if not passed in the bond referendum, could be included at the district's discretion. So the public would know because it's in the list, as, you know, it might happen. We might have to.
I can check with Ms. Heiser on
I'm
that.
just, and it might not work. I mean, I just don't know, because I mean, that is
I can check with Ms. Heiser.
I'm just curious. I hope I articulated that clearly, but thank you. Anybody else? Sorry, guys. All right. Dr. Ross, does that conclude that part
That
of 18?
concludes that part, yes, ma'am.
All right, so that moves us to 19 on the discussion agenda, the adoption of rezoning plan for 26, 27.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. At this time, I would like to talk about the rezoning plan for 26-27 school year. As you're aware, we have been talking about how we feel our existing facilities to accommodate the growth. It has been the strategy of the 5-year plan to use our existing facilities to address our current growth patterns that we see in the district. And so when we talk about filling our schools, we have talked about the difference in fill rates between the theoretical field, our maximum field of our programs, and then what we try to target to be competitive in terms of class sizes. When you map that out in the district, you can see that the expanding population in Chapin is the issue. And so our goal is to look at the existing space that we have in the Dutch Fork area to address the growth in Chapin. Also make note that we are seeing some unique trends in areas such as Leapart Elementary School with growing numbers of students that we're getting from subdivisions like Whitehall, but the majority of the issue that we see are in Chapin. So our goal is to move from the existing structure that we have, as you can see at the top of this graph, to what I'm calling the default map that will allow us to move our students to our existing facilities to balance out that those red areas there. We have created a structure here that will allow a 5 middle school model that goes away from the Crossroads as an intermediate school to a Crossroads as a middle school that moves all of our middle schools to 6th, 7th, and 8th. We also have a plan or a structure in the event there is a successful referendum, which allows expanded buildings. So those expanded buildings open up more program space for us. So as we are doing this, rezoning is also moving teachers and also programs along with students. It's not comfortable, and so that's why we started this planning process. It is our hope, and I put a red dot here, that we can inform our staff before contracts are signed on May 2025 of where they will be in August 2026. We would like for them to sign their contracts knowing what facility they will be in for the rezoning plan. If you look at our chart, it gives us less than a year to make all of those plans. We feel to be adequate, to be successful, we need to move forward in telling our staff and assigning our programs and assigning our teachers. We will use the 25-26 school year for transition. But we can't use the 25-26 school year for transition if we're telling them during the 25-26 school year. So what I would like to do is adopt the default map. We are currently within 3 maps right now. It is confusing. We need to move to at least 2. The default map represents where we would be if the referendum does not pass. The expanded map represents expanded facilities and would represent the zones where we would be if the referendum was to pass. We have created through our Student Services Office a link on our website, and you can scan and go on there and you can put in all the parcels. Dr. Harris and his team have put hundreds of thousands of parcels for each map, so that you can see where your house would be, how your home is affected by either map. And of those, and we encourage and continue to encourage the community to go in and see how this impacts you. But we have a lot of planning to do, and we're less than a year away from doing it. And so our goal is that the board would approve 2 maps, the default 2026-27 attendance zone map that will be used if there's no bond referendum, and the expanded 26-27 attendance map to be included if the referendum was to pass. And this is expanding Chapin Elementary, Lake Murray Elementary, having a new Dutch Fork Elementary School, and a remodeled Rich Lex Education Center. I think the balance in us ethically is to always present a balance of what happens if it does versus if it doesn't, to educate our community. And so that is the recommendation of the administration.
Any questions? Mr. Satterfield?
I don't have a real question. I do have a comment I think is important to make at this time, and that is that I applaud the superintendent and his team of folks who have been working on this for so very long. This is a very difficult undertaking. 33 years in education, referendums come and go. Rezoning is a very difficult thing because you're moving families from their home schools where they've grown to love and become affiliated. And I want to caution everyone who may be watching on YouTube there that these plans, all plans with regard to attendance, remain fluid, because that's how schools operate. It's very difficult to determine exactly. I know you all have done a lot of studies and you've looked into it, you've done a lot of analyzing, and again, you've adjusted and made some changes already. But all the critics will come out if there's one minor change, or somebody from on this side of the street ends up going to a school on the other side of the street or whatever, away from where they were zoned. But I think it's important to recognize the efforts that these folks have, the district office folks have put into this, and to just remember that this will be, I know you're trying to get it as exactly, to the point to where it's as finite as possible, but there always will be some fluidity. And with the way that the growth is, and I know I've mentioned several times, I ride around Chapin frequently looking at the neighborhoods and the changes in the Dutch Fork area. I started going out in that area as well. But anyway, I wanted to commend you guys, and also just to throw that out there, that there may be some changes in the near future. So just be aware. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Scully?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again, Dr. Ross. I agree with you on this issue. I mean, the reality is that we're going to have to redistrict and rezone, rather. And the importance of it, of getting out in front and getting this done prior to the teacher assignments next year, I think is critical. And we just passed a budget earlier tonight, and, you know, planning for the next year. And this is kind of doing the same thing for the attendance. And, you know, if we get to, if we do it in time prior to the contracts being due next year for the teachers, and we find that some teachers do have issues or take issues with their assignment, it gives us time to address that. And that's critical, so that, you know, I know a lot of concern that we're going to lose teachers. Well, then that gives us time to handle that situation and get out in front of it. So I think it's never a fun subject when you talk about rezoning, but this is the reality, and the sooner we face it, the better.
Anyone else? All right. Does that conclude?
That concludes it. Yes, ma'am.
All right, item 19. That brings us to item 20, which is the 5-year master's facilities plan and solicitation for A&E support as seen in Exhibit, H.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. At this time, we know we won't be able to conclude this conversation tonight, but we just wanted to start the conversation with the board regarding the 5-year master facilities plan. As Ms. Rawls has shared, we've shown you our capital outlook with the referendum and without the referendum in terms of the funds that we're able to garnish. We've showed you how this impacts your taxes with a failed referendum or a passed referendum, and so we wanted to outline that as well. Tonight, we wanted to put some time on considerations if the referendum does not pass, kind of going back to what we've discussed earlier, what those plans are. And we need help in order to fully educate the community. We've heard about what are the costs to operate with a referendum. Well, I don't feel comfortable talking about that without talking about the cost of operating without it. So I can compare. I don't want to be seen as violating that ethical obligation of educating both sides. So I want to be able to share both areas. What does it cost to operate with it, and what does it cost to operate without? And so as we think about our conditions of the facilities, we had a third party tell us this is the conditions of the facilities. They rated in August of 2023 $182 million worth of needs that we are informed that we have to address. And so we, with our 5-year plan, put these projects of a total of $230 million. We're asking for $240 million to address these. And you can see that if we take out the annual capital, that's that $15 million that we do annual capital, if we take that out, what is the additional monies that we have? Now, this assumes that the $15 million that we were using for the debt service is already assigned. So I do want to make that caveat. But in 2025, with the referendum, we have an additional $80 million that we can address. Without it, it's zero. You can see at 2026, we have another additional $80 million, same thing in 27. You see the figures that we have without the referendum. It would take us to, Ms. Rawls, 2037 without the referendum to get the $240 million. But as you know, the cost will be much different by that time. So our question, and just to kind of put a pin in this, not saying we have to have a major discussion tonight, but we don't have a plan without it. So what projects do we start first? And that's in order to really talk about true apples to apples comparisons. Where do we begin as an administration, the recommendation? And so we just wanted to put this out. I think it's important for the board to share where do we begin. We did have a discussion of what's the recommendation from the administration if we were to recommend starting. I know that a lot of needs, you start to the bottom and you work your way up to the top. We're still waiting out to 2026, or we're recalling existing funds from projects we already have already established out. So we need direction from this body on what we would do without a referendum. What's that plan? Are we going to ignore the facilities? What's the plan? For us, one of the things that we're really worried about is how to operate Dutch Fork Elementary School with the road widening. We would like to put some considerations to this project. If you look at the red line, it represents approximately using the church's, that's St. Peter's Baptist Church, using, did I get that name right? I'm looking at that's the name of their church. But the church next door, St. Peter's, their marquee is a good kind of overall of where that road is coming. And so we draw a straight line from that road, and that can show you the impact. What we have here is operations. We're able to get some operational drone shots and footage of what we look like currently dismissing. This is a really, and Ms. Snipes has been in this. This is a tough time here on Broad River already, Broad River Road. We need to really come up with an answer, and we have some limitations. We have the church property. We have a graveyard that's right next to us. I mean, there are some things that we got to have to work out. So I just want to, for tonight, just to set the discussion, set the parameters. We can come back again and have another discussion. But to truly educate and inform the community of operational costs, we need to know what's our plan if there is no referendum. So I just want to arc to one of the things that Mr. Scully said is by informing, and I know this is kind of mixing things, but I just want to enter this here, by informing teachers of May 2025 of where they're going, it allows us that in our middle school model, if their teachers are not certified for middle school, we get 2 summers to pay for their certification. But also, it lets us know what building the facility they're going to be in, and then how we plan for that as well, because that's going to look much different in an expanded building versus in our current facilities. So we would like to start planning both of those. It is also incumbent upon us that there are 4 projects that if the referendum does pass, that we be in position to move on August of 2026. And with 18 months of construction that's needed, and that's with grace, we would like to start turning dirt as soon as possible. And those 4 projects are Chapin Elementary's new wing, Lake Murray Elementary's new wing, a new Dutch Fork Elementary School, and to remodel the existing Dutch Fork Elementary School into the Rich Lakes Education Center. So again, in the balanced presentation, we have one recommendation is that the board prioritize projects and funding sources for the 5-year facilities plan if the referendum does not pass, and that the board approve the A&E for these 4 projects to begin, so that in the event it does pass, we're able to execute our 2026-27 rezoning. So again, there's no action tonight, just putting this before the board for discussion.
I have a question, Dr. Rawson. Just reading the proposed RFQ, and there being 3 separate contracts, so could there potentially be 3 separate businesses on each? Or are we asking first folks to respond to all of the all of the projects? One
There-
company for
there-
all of?
Not necessarily, no. I think that you may see that obviously pairing Chapin Elementary and Lake Murray Elementary, since they're very similar projects, it would be easy to pair those together, but we're not necessarily looking for one firm to do all of them. I think it's gonna end up being split up.
Okay, and then also on the draft that we received, there are dates for submission. Are those
Those are
just?
estimates right
Okay,
now.
so those are off from where we are time frame, right?
Correct.
Right now, okay. Anyone else? Ms. Huddle?
Those are all good questions, by the way. Is there I didn't see, is there a deadline in there for them to be done with the design phase?
No, ma'am, I believe that would be negotiated through the process.
Okay.
But we can, I mean, if that's something you want added, we can certainly look into that.
Well, if the whole point is to have them ready, I mean, I would think we would put that, at least put that in there, what we want, because I didn't see that in there. The other question I had was, so it's for design, but it's also for construction management, and it says that is contingent. So are we going to ask for the submitters to give us bifurcated prices? Here's my design price, here's my construction management price. That way, if the bond referendum doesn't pass, we're not committed to the whole thing?
And I think this is just the RFQ. We would do negotiating on the pricing on the back end of this. We would just qualify them as our design teams at this point in time, and then we would look at what the costing would be. But yeah, I mean, we can do that.
Okay, so there's a lot of really good architects, and we've used a lot of them before, so what I'm hearing you say is we're not gonna pick them at all based on price, it's purely gonna be based on qualifications?
They would be shortlisted based on qualifications. But the design generally is not done based on pricing.
Okay, but the shortlist would be presented to the board with the pricing?
There again, I'm
I
not
don't
sure
know
we will
yet.
have pricing
Okay.
at that time. And if you look on page 5, under the RFQ, it does have dates for construction documents to be completed under 1, 2, and 3 on 1.1.1.
Okay, thank you. And then also, because of the way this is worded, I'm assuming these projects would then become design, bid, build, not construction management at risk.
All these are being put out as design, bid, build, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So that is something that I would be interested in knowing, because there's one thing to say, like, that we want, the architects to come up with the design, so that we're ready to move forward however we move forward. But I think that one of the things that we've realized over the last few years, like, the longer that you wait for a project, the more expensive that it could be. So in here, it identifies those 3 projects and an estimated budget for those projects based upon if it passes, the bond referendum passes, and those projects are substantially completed by 2026, 2027. So in the next few years, if they're completed, so that, and it does say in here, just for folks that are not looking at this document, that actual construction is contingent on the passing of the bond referendum. But one of the reasons why I feel like the administration is bringing this to us is so that we're kind of going ahead and getting ready for one of 2 situations. The bond passes, the bond doesn't pass, but we already have the design documents, because these projects have to happen for the best interest of our students, to make everything kind of work. But the reality is, when you look at how much these cost, and you look at the chart that you just showed us on where money is coming from and how we're getting the money, if the bond doesn't pass, we can't necessarily move forward with these on the time frame. So when we're sending this forward with this information, it makes sense to know, okay, we are looking for qualifications, but we also want to know that we're not obligating ourselves to pay what we can't pay. So what does that look like? And it may look like, we might, I don't know, I'm just curious.
And I think right now we're looking at design, so it's not necessarily putting us in the construction side. This is getting ready where if the bond referendum were not to pass, we will still have the construction documents. Lake Murray and Chapin Elementary are not going to change. They will still have the design completed to add those additional wings, and we would maybe look at other financing opportunities.
And so we would just
Down the
take
line.
those on a different year or a different time frame, and we're not obligated at that time, locked into any.
It's just the design. We're looking at only designing the construction so that at the point in time, if the referendum does pass, we put out to bid what the construction would look like and get the bids on the construction project. This is only design.
Okay.
Kind of related to that, for the next meeting, could we, and I realize it's just an estimate, but just an estimate of what the design would probably cost for the wings and also for the new elementary school, just so we know, because like you said, I'm not really concerned about the wings. I think there'll be a way to pay for that. But if the bond referendum doesn't pass, it would be nice for the board just to know we're kind of committing to this sunk cost for this elementary school design, and just to know that. So some estimate, and maybe just look at what do we pay for Piney Woods and add a percentage to it or something.
And we can do that. I think the biggest unknown regarding the new elementary school is the property. So, that could make the variance in the design based on what the topography is of where we end up. So there again, it would be a very rough estimate.
Okay, that's a really good point. So, yeah, how does that work since we haven't bought any property?
So we have, we're trying to bring these in all at the same time. That's why we had the discussion about a potential location. If you look at our timeline, I am trying to bring this for a realization that we can move in August 2026. So all of these trains are moving at the same station, and we're trying to bring them all into Union Station at the same time. That's our work. So when we get to the part of issuance, it may be that we only can move forward on the ones that we're ready on. Is the other part that we need to look at is, regardless, we're going to have to look at Dutch Fork Elementary School anyway. Because if it doesn't pass, we got a serious matter on our hands as well. So I think we're going to have to execute an A&E team anyway on that site, at least on that Rich Lake side. So of all of the 4 projects, I would think that the only one that would be held up or site contingent is the new Dutch Fork Elementary School.
And one thing also, while the goal is to have all the construction documents ready at the time that you start construction, some of the internal pieces may be works in progress where they haven't quite 100% finished the design. So I think that you could start construction prior to all of the documents being completed, but they would already have the cost estimates and everything in hand. I mean, I just think there's multiple ways that we can look at this down the road.
Mr. Satterfield?
Yeah, Dr. Ross, the MPS study, were they aware of the change with Dutch Fork Elementary School with the widening of the road at the time?
Alan?
No, sir, I don't think they were aware.
Yeah, I was just curious if they had a chance to say, well, if you had, if we were going to just keep it Dutch Fork Elementary School, what kind of changes they were going to recommend. And I agree with Dr. Ross. That is a pressing need. That would definitely be a pressing need, not only for the safety, but the design of the school is not very good either. I know it's been added to and modified several times. But Dr. Ross, I know you mentioned in the past the long list of necessary repairs and how we just can't seem to get to them. If the referendum passes, would that eliminate a great number of those repairs that we can't seem to get to?
But it's a long way to eliminating a lot of the issues we can't address now.
No. Yeah, that's one of my concerns is that sometimes I know that when we went through the referendum at Chapin the first time and it didn't pass, we were constantly trying to fix and repair and modify, and we've probably spent a lot of, well, I know we spent a lot of taxpayer dollars making modifications on things that were later changed because when the referendum did pass, as far as being good use of the taxpayer dollars. But I doubt MPS said, well, if it doesn't pass, you'll be okay, and, you know, it might take some time. But I got a sneaky feeling that that list is just going to grow longer. But I guess my real question was, I was curious about the widening of the road, if they had been aware of that and had made any recommendations. But, okay, thank you.
Settle.
One more question. So, I don't know exactly how much this is going to cost, but let's just say $2 million. Where are we going to get the money from?
We have allocated $3.5 million for the 5-year plan. So that is the funds that we have to work with, but that's the land acquisition, that's the A&E services, that's all in that $3.5 million allocated by the board.
So the fund balance that the operating fund balance that we previously allocated, that's that 3.5, it would come out of that?
They come out of that 3.5.
Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. Scully?
Just want to clarify and confirm more than anything. So the district would be the owner of those documents and the results.
That's correct.
And so because the designs, they don't necessarily expire. There's not a lifespan to them. Designs will be updated as normal, as things need to be as we go on. So if for some reason we do get them now and can't act on them, the district will retain ownership of them and the right to use them at any point in the future.
That's correct.
Can I ask another, strange question this is because full disclosure, I do not build buildings, and I do not know this answer. But don't we have documents for an elementary school that wasn't built in our district that has already designed an elementary school? Could that be taken and adapted for potential new property so that it wouldn't cost us as much?
I would have to take a look at that. I have not seen any prints or anything along those lines.
I'm pretty sure that we do have a school that was designed for that Derrick's Pond property, but it was never used because we couldn't use the property. I don't know how that school translates into another property, but if that is a way, I don't know. I would just like to know if, because we have documents of another school, could that be used where we don't have to necessarily spend as much money on design work?
Were there conceptuals or construction documents?
Honestly, I don't know. I just, Ms. Huddle may know, but I know that those were things that were people at Piney Woods, or when Piney Woods was being built, Piney Woods was such a different design than that design. So that the conversation was happening in public. I don't know that answer. That's why, but I'm sure people have those questions.
I know we were trying to look at more of an Oak Point look to that, but were they, Ms. Huddle, do you know if they were CDs?
That's what I was going to say. I'm pretty sure that we paid for a design for Derrick's Pond. So I agree. I think that's an excellent question is, do we have those plans and could they be used even if they had to be altered a little bit?
They might be modified.
obviously.
And it might be that they're outdated from a safety standpoint. I don't know. I'm just curious what happens if you don't use documents and they go into the abyss. Like if we still own them, if we can use them, and if we can't, then we can explain why.
And there may be some potential for that. Typically, your life safety code, that changes, and then all the other subsequent codes change behind that. And then you also have your building codes that change from year to year. I would just need to look into that. I was not aware that we had that any drawings along those lines for a new school, but definitely something I'll take a look at.
It would also be, I'd be curious how much they were. If we have them, how much did we pay for them? Anybody else? Do I have any motions?
I got one.
Yes.
If we're ready to go to the next one, I've got a motion to adjourn.
I have a second?
I
Ms.
second.
Snipes? Oh, I heard Ms. Snipes first, sorry. Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. We will adjourn until June 24th.